So I sat the Life in the UK test recently and I passed. Big surprise. But I got 4 questions wrong. 4. And I've lived in the UK all my life. That's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Oh dear. Now, if you're learning English and you think you might like to live in the UK in the future, this Life in the UK test may be something you're already aware of. If you want to live in the UK but you're not from here, you would apply for something called indefinite leave to remain. That's a mouthful of words, isn't it? Indefinite means permanent, and leave to remain just means permission to stay in the UK. So indefinite leave to remain, or ILR as it's called. Or you might go straight to British citizenship through a process called naturalisation. That's the legal process of becoming a citizen of a country that you weren't born in. So if someone moves from Pakistan or Poland or Peru and eventually becomes British, they've gone through a process of naturalisation. But to do either of these things, you have to meet something called the KOLL requirement. KOLL stands for Knowledge of Language and Life in the UK. So part of that is passing this test, the Life in the UK test. It asks about all kinds of things, and it's 24 multiple choice questions that you must complete in 45 minutes. Multiple choice means there's a question and several answers. You've got to choose the right answer. To pass, you need at least 75%, so that's at least 18 out of the 24 questions right. It costs £50 to attempt the test, and you take it from an approved centre, not from home. But if I got only 20 out of 24, how difficult is it to pass for people who are not from the UK? Listen on to find out. Now, I have to tell you, I thought some of the questions were quite difficult. I thought of my son, he's 17. I'm not sure he would know the answers to all of these questions either. Some of them I thought were quite obscure facts. That's obscure, OBSCURE. And obscure can mean dark or hidden, but in this context, obscure means relatively unknown or difficult to understand. Some of the questions were easy, like what is the capital of the UK and what is the name of the British currency? But then you get questions like this. John Constable founded the UK police force. True or false? Now that's what we call a trick question. You may know that the lowest ranked police officer in the UK police force is called a constable. That's CONSTABLE. But John Constable was actually a well-known landscape painter in the 17 and 1800s. Completely different person. The founder of the UK police force was a man called Robert Peel. That's why police officers sometimes used to be called bobbies. In the US, they call them cops, but we don't really use that in the UK. Then another question which surprised me. Gertrude Jekyll is famous for designs in which field? And the multiple choice answers were fashion, gardening, silverware, or pottery. Would you know the answer to that one? I knew it because I'm a gardener. But I honestly wonder how many British people would know that Gertrude Jekyll was a garden designer. Another question. How often does Prime Minister's questions happen when Parliament is sitting? Possible answers: once a week, twice a week, once a month, or every day. Well, I think you could be forgiven for not knowing that if politics is not your thing. But Prime Minister's questions, or PMQs, happens once a week when Parliament is sitting. It's when Keir Starmer at the moment gets a roasting from the opposition and has lots of questions to answer. Another example of a question: how old do you have to be in the UK to buy a lottery ticket? That's the National Lottery. Options: 16 years old or 18 years old. Do you know the answer to that? Well, I guessed correctly. It was 18 years old, because it's betting and we don't like to think of under 18s being involved in betting. So this test was introduced in 2005, and the idea was that people who want to come and live and settle in the UK should learn something about British society, its culture, its traditions, how things work. The test has had quite a lot of criticism though, for focusing on what's called historical trivia. That's trivia, Trivia. And trivia means small facts or details, things which may be interesting but perhaps aren't that important to someone's life in the UK. You might know the name of a painter from 200 years ago, but it's probably more useful if you come to the UK to understand how to register with a doctor or GP so that you can get healthcare. Professor Tom Brooks from Durham University described the test as outdated and too focused on memorising facts rather than helping people become active members of British society. And he pointed out that the test had never been reviewed since it began in 2005. Since then, around 3 million people have taken it, and no one's ever really reviewed whether the information they had to learn is useful to them. And that brings me to possible changes or reforms, which are changes made to a system or laws. So the government proposed some reforms in 2025. They do this by putting together something called a white paper. And in it, they proposed shifting the focus of the test from dates and monarchs, that means kings and queens, bits of history in other words, to something completely different. That thing, British values. What do we even mean by British values? Well, according to the UK government, there are 5 of them. And they are worth understanding, not just for a test. They tell you about culture in the UK. I'll explain them in a minute. Before I do that, if you're enjoying listening to this podcast and you fancy doing some more English language listening, don't forget our subscription service where you will receive 8 extra episodes a month, all ad-free for a very small fee. Just go to adeptenglish.com to sign up. Whether you're working towards an English language test, naturalization, or indefinite leave to remain, you'll need a certain level of proficiency in English too. And even if you just want to be able to have a conversation in a coffee shop, keep listening. This really works to help you gain command of English. So the first of these British values is democracy. That's Democracy. Democracy means the government is accountable to the people. They have to answer to the people. That means they have to explain their actions and be responsible for them. So if your MP, your Member of Parliament, makes a promise and doesn't keep it, you hold them accountable at the next election. You don't vote for them. So we vote for our Members of Parliament usually once every 5 years. And you can contact your MP if you have an issue. And we have, at the moment anyway, a right to peaceful protest. I do feel that right is somewhat under threat at the moment. But you can also join any political party and you can stand for election yourself. Imagine that. Lots of people who were not originally from the UK do that and get elected. And something which is very important and very British, people do criticise the government here. I criticise the government sometimes in my podcasts. But in the pub, on the TV, with friends, nobody's afraid to say that the government or the Prime Minister got it wrong. If you come from a country where criticising the government carries risk, you'll know how important this British value is. The second British value is rule of law. It means everyone follows the same laws. The Prime Minister, a billionaire, someone who arrived in the country last week, the law is the same for everyone. And as we say, nobody is above the law. It doesn't matter who you are. And that became important earlier this year with the arrest of Peter Mandelson, who was UK ambassador to the US, and with the arrest of Prince Andrew, as he was called. So even being a member of the royal family, Queen Elizabeth's son, it still doesn't mean you're above the law. I'm not sure that works 100% of the time. It did take a long time for the law to catch up with Prince Andrew, or Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he's now called. The third British value is individual liberty. This means you're free to live your life as you choose, as long as you're not breaking the law, at least. Imagine choosing whatever you want to wear tomorrow, or what career to go for, or who to spend your life with. These are very personal choices, and individual liberty means the law protects your right to make them. Nobody can force you into a particular job, a particular marriage, or a particular religion. You choose yourself. So you can dress how you like here, practice any religious faith, or none at all, and you can express your opinions, even if they're unpopular. It's what we call a tolerant society, and that's a good thing. We like that here. Another British value, there is protection against something called discrimination. Discrimination, discrimination, discrimination. It means unfair treatment based on who you are, whether that's your age, your race, your religion, your sex, or your sexuality. And the Equality Act 2010 makes discrimination against the law. So your individual liberty, your right to choose, is backed by law. The fourth and fifth British values are grouped together. Mutual respect, that means we respect one another, and tolerance of those of different faiths and beliefs. Britain is an incredibly varied country. We have Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Jews, Buddhists, and atheists, and agnostics like me. You don't have to agree with everyone's belief, but you do have to respect it. Again, I feel like that's a really good thing. So those are the British values that you may also have to learn and understand, as well as currently passing the Life in the UK test, of course. You can practice it online, and maybe it's a little easier than I'm suggesting because I think they do give you some material to learn. Perhaps that prompts you in the right direction. We had fun with it and certainly didn't get all the answers right. But about 70% of people pass first time, and the number of people taking the test is going up. A record of nearly 60,000 people took the test in the last 3 months of 2025 alone. Don't forget as well, you need an English qualification, speaking and listening at level B1 or above, if English isn't your first language. So even more reason to keep listening to Adept English then. Every bit of listening practice genuinely helps.